How to quit being a perpetual afterthought.
9 power moves to earn prioritization. Why 9 powerful psychological strategies. Ever feel like your own life is on permanent pause while you orbit the priorities of everyone else? Like you're just excess supporting baggage rather than a prized main attraction? Whether it's romantic partners, family, friends, or even colleagues at work, that gnawing sense you're an afterthought can steadily crush the soul. Experiences like slaving over a homemade birthday feast for your spouse, only for them to express indifference while glued to their phone all night. Or busting your back on a huge project at work, but all the credit funnels to that smooth-talking narcissist coworker. Maybe it's loved ones who can't be bothered to show up for major life events, despite your recurring presence for theirs. Whatever your flavor of getting the short end of the prioritization stick, the psychic toll is all too real. Being brushed aside or taken for granted activates the deepest insecurities. Am I truly valued? Do these people even appreciate the immense care I put into our bond? If any of that hits viscerally, you've stumbled on the right place. Because I'm about to break down 9 utterly critical mindset shifts and psychological power moves to escape these deprioritization traps. No longer will your energy, wisdom, love, and presence be something others can neglect or discard. You're about to command the reverence you deserve. These aren't manipulations. They're seasoned strategies leveraging age-old psychological principles to command respect and investment from those taking you for granted. Driving value realignment through scarcity, mystique, and rewiring codependent imbalances. The 9 power moves. Let's explore each of these power moves in depth, using dispassionate psychological research and pointed anonymous examples to reframe the scripts holding us back from prioritization we crave.
Power move 1. Staying in permanent untap mode.
We'll kick things off by leaning into a profoundly impactful psychological precept, our instinctive tendency to overvalue resources or connections that feel scarce or temporarily inaccessible. When desirable things flow with infinite abundance, we ironically start assigning less worth. It's just human nature. This scarcity principle is what motivates collector frenzies around limited product drops. It's why we savor those rare vacations that required grueling saved funds and nightmare travel logistics to manifest. Deep down, we prioritize the things requiring pursuit, not necessarily the ones blithely appearing on a silver platter. Now consider the damage that psychological hardwiring can wreak in our most cherished bonds and relationships when we're endlessly available. The taken-for-granted partner who always obliges last-second requests with no objection. The eager friend incessantly initiating hangouts and conversations to an increasingly dismissive audience. Or the doting family members who remold their whole lives around pleasing selfish narcissist patriarchs and matriarchs at all costs. In each case, we're failing to properly leverage scarcity impact, to shape a sense of temporary inaccessibility that jolts people out of mindless neglect and restores active investment in pursuit. The key is judiciously withdrawing some of your presence and emotional labor, not as punishment, but to create absence that makes the heart grow fonder. Some strategic untaps could include the attentive mom who backed off lawn mowing all her adult kids' household needs, creating appreciation vacuums when minor duties started slipping. The eager people-pleaser friend stopped over accommodating flaky cancellations or low-effort hangout plans, declining what would have been her automatic yes. The burned-out employee dialing back overtime hours and extra responsibilities for a few weeks, allowing the business to feel his valuable impact more acutely. That relocating maneuver, though minor, sparks awareness of its absence. The same way levying intermittent scarcity revitalizes our priorities and urgencies. We can't take the permanently untapped, effortlessly available people for granted when we're forced to appreciate their temporary void.
Power move 2. Access window scheduling.
In the modern age of constant connection and distraction saturation, perhaps the most valuable currency is your undivided presence and attention, not just showing up for those all-important moments, but being a fully immersive force to cherish. Yet so many of us have been programmed with a subconscious belief that infinite accessibility is noble. The mindset that saying no or establishing boundaries is unreasonable, high-maintenance behavior. We leave our concentration availability wide open so people can tap in and nibble away at whenever proves convenient for them, allowing our focus to become fragmented. This is where the power move of access window scheduling reveals its regenerative effects. Essentially, you use elements of your calendar to physically withhold unbroken time and focus. First, define periods like work hours where communication is limited to urgent essentials only, family meal slots with strict no-device rules in effect, personal rejuvenation windows for exercise, hobbies, journaling, etc., with no external inputs permitted. Then you leverage those time segments as strategically scarce access windows where you're fully immersed and engaged, while training others to work around those rejuvenating blocks of restorative solitude. Done properly, this move allows you to escape the toxic norms of always being half present or spread too thin. It aggressively evaluates your awareness as a finite resource requiring intentional investment to earn. You go from the half-engaged person mindlessly responding to every beck and call to the fascinating enigma projected onto a big screen for a limited theatrical premiere every week. Over time, those who previously viewed you as a perpetually passive utility start recognizing the higher precious stature of your presence. You've transformed from a basic cable package, available 24/7, into a luxury house of ulterior appreciation and perspicacity. A riveting cameo to be savored rather than a stale commodity in constant surplus supply.
Power move 3, peeling the onion.
One of the most criminally underrated psychological persuasion principles is the hypnotic power of mystique cultivation, or what I like to call the art of peeling the onion for those deserving your undivided presence. Simply put, human beings are wired to fixate and heavily prioritize things and experiences that remain partially obscured from full view. Our peak intrigue lies in the unknown, the yet unveiled giving rise to tantalizing curiosities and insatiable investigation. To counteract that stagnation, you'll want to judiciously dole out components of your personality and perspective incrementally over time. Deliberately pique interest and dissolve it intermittently, always cultivating a sense that greater depths remain to be unveiled for those committed to earning it. Some power moves could include that Renaissance soul waxing briefly about their latest unconventional artistic pursuit before drifting back into pensive, creative silence. The sage mentor savoring moments to punctuate bits of profoundly compelling wisdom or counterintuitive perspective before warmly dismissing overflow questions in the moment. The goal is never full obfuscation or cheesy caginess. You're simply leveraging humanity's innate fascination with the unknown and not yet explored, deploying patience prompting mystique rather than firing off your fully mapped identity and beliefs in one fell swoop. Even the closest of bonds require that ongoing journey of delightful rediscovery. Standards who fail to leave others intrigued through a rolling sense of mystique gradually become banal by their own overexposure. So deploy your magnetic appeal with artfully rationed restraint. Stay a scintillating work in progress whose complete knowing requires sustained immersion. Peeling the onion, layer by layer.
Power move 4, sweat equity scoring.
If you really want someone to profoundly value and respect your presence as an utmost priority, one of the most powerful psychological tactics is making them legitimately invest in the process of earning it. Study after study reveals that humans universally assign higher appreciation and emotional equity to things we overcome challenges and obstacles to acquire. Whether epic adventures requiring sweeping sacrifices or material possessions painstakingly hunted down over years, that sense of invested sweat equity shapes protective reverence. Even the origins of most major faith systems boil down to hardship narratives, reinforcing sacred appreciation for moral codes and theological insight earned through tribulation. From Hajj pilgrimages to Lenten observances, we've evolved to conflate worthiness with adversity overcome. This insight can be transmuted into earning next-level prioritization from those humans currently taking your value for granted, by reintroducing the need for invested sweat equity into your bond rather than deprioritizing yourself as unconditional utility. Some potent applications. The neglected genius who cultivated rabid superfan tribes by introducing ascending echelons of exclusive access, rewards, and immersion. The exhausted parent who revived their kids' appreciation by detaching from relentless household chore enablement, reframing those acts as aspirational paid services. At its core, this power move requires shaping the journey of prioritizing your connections as a special privilege to feel honored earning, rather than giveaways or unappreciated freebies easily discarded. The journey needn't be cruel or manipulative. Simple, consistent reinforcement of progressive milestone, unlocks, and exclusive reservations for those demonstrating their commitment wires powerful psychological incentives to stay invested. You're modeling highly coveted bonds, not as guaranteed expectations, but as precious entities to savor and defend through constant sweat equity revitalization. Just subtly detaching that freebie faucet forces, reprioritizing behavior realignments.
Power move 5, becoming the prize, not the pitcher.
Many of our most pernicious modern prioritization gaps emerge from the depressingly common caretaker script we're socially conditioned to fulfill. The incessant role of sacrificing one's life force, bandwidth, and fulfillment to eternally accommodate and serve the perceived priorities of others. When your psyche starts revolving around being a tireless pitcher, always on the mound, it conditions entitlement from the recipient, along with resentment and self-abandonment in the giver. Everything from boundaries to self-care to personal fulfillment is deprioritized in service of someone else's voracious vacuum of need. The solution? Fundamentally rebrand and recondition your self-image and value proposition in those relational dynamics. Take a sledgehammer to those martyr scripts and recast yourself as the fascinating, multifaceted prize worthy of being prioritized. It's not about retaliation through toxic selfishness or narcissism. Just owning your deservedness as the elite prize, not pitching for auxiliary prioritization. Meeting those requirements becomes a tantalizing experience worth making their main event.
Power move 6, nurturing your own orbit.
When you reflexively make other people the center of gravity in your life, a dangerous power dynamic forms, whether intended or not. They become the central prioritized locus, while you gradually decentralize into an orbiting secondary priority. These psychologically depleting dynamics take many twisted forms. The friend group, where everyone bends and revolves their availability, interests, and conversation topics around whatever whims the coolest ringleader personality decrees. Meanwhile, no one else seems to ask for the reverse, so they normalize revolving. Those archetypal dynamics play out in infinite variations, but the core script seldom deviates. The loving grandparent who falls into depression after their entire web of routines, activities, and hobbies get swallowed into an endless cycle of deferential prioritization for spoiled grandchildren's indulgent demands. Or even the thriving creative who achieves wild independent success, only to squander all that momentum by revolving their precious days around an impossibly demanding partner's rigidly canalized expectations. To escape these deprioritization hells and reclaim your rightful gravity as a compelling life force to be reckoned with requires boldly reasserting your once vibrant inner orbit as the universal centrifuge it should be. This typically involves a multi-stage process of reinvestment and realignment. 1. Clearly visualize and articulate the selfhood you've allowed to decay, the dreams and ambitions and prioritizations that once fueled your unique trajectory through life. Retrieve or reconstruct this vision with uncompromising reverence and self-compassion. 2. Surround yourself with relentlessly supportive allies invested in buoying your recentered path, not sycophants orbiting their own insecurity-driven agendas. Let them provide external validation as you internally realign. 3. Deploy one courageous act of prioritizing your core priorities first, no matter how shocking or dividing it may initially appear. Shock provides visceral demarcation that your orbit supersedes any other influence. 4. Systematically reintroduce life-giving disciplines and hobbies and interests previously abdicated during the orbiter descent. These are your gravity's anchoring foundations to keep realignment drifts from recurring. 5. With love and firm boundaries, inform pivotal others they're welcome to realign into your sovereign orbit. But be willing to solemnly, permanently eject those refusing to decentralize from their own orbits. But it all starts with boldly reinvesting in your own orbital renaissance as the only top billing lead your life will ever have. Everything else, career, romance, friendships, becomes a mesmerizingly beautiful interplanetary dance, not someone else's satellite relegation. Show the cosmos you're a fixed, brilliant phenomenon to build worlds around, not another burnt-out rock endlessly circling a black hole.
Power move 7, curing thirst traps.
We've all been there before, caught in gratification loops of desperately initiating contact and interaction with someone who seems to have deprioritized true reciprocation. We tell ourselves the imbalance is just temporary and understandable, given circumstances. But deep down, we're stuck in painfully codependent cycles any psychologist would diagnose as dysfunctional. Some cringe-worthy manifestations that ring all too familiar. The needy inner circle friend blowing up everyone's group chat with passive-aggressive plan-making for outings, events, or link shares only to tumbleweeds in response thanks to collective fatigue. The overbearing family member rationalizing barrages of voicemails and inappropriate unscheduled visits as just being a devoted presence in the kids' or siblings' lives. In each case, these grueling cycles of pursuit are founded on ironically reasonable conceits. You truly value the connection being neglected, so you catastrophize letting it slip completely without perpetual reinitiation overtures. But in reality, the more you uncontrollably overcompensate with forced engagement, the more you advertise overwhelming supply against insufficient demand. In the process, you extinguish your own most precious flames of dignity, boundaries, and self-preservation instincts. These thirst trap tendencies don't emerge from secure, unconditional self-worth. The root psychological drives are textbook abandonment complexes, excessive fear of dismissal, or codependent overattachment. Toxic residues from childhood or previous volatile relationships instilling desperation to overcompensate and overcorrect. So you keep texting, and calling, and planning, and speech tracking every single deprioritized bond in deranged commitment to satiate unfulfillable ego voids. Over time, these repetitive initiation cycles become fruitless, alienating self-parodies doing little beyond cementing your identity as someone easily taken for granted, neglected, or discarded without a second thought. Sure, you may irregularly achieve a temporary resurgence of their attention or priority, only to quickly fade back into the background once they're resatiated. Should you truly want the affirmation of someone whose perpetual dismissiveness seems to indicate you're just attempting to squeeze precious jets of appreciation from an indifferent stone, reframe priorities to appreciate intrinsic self-worth and those voluntarily mirroring back equal energy. In the end, sinking deeper into the depraved thirst trap is an addict's fugue state temporarily masking abandonment through delusion. One your highest self should reject in service of aligning connections you don't need to hungrily reinitiate, but causes mutually invested stakeholders to prioritize maintaining.
Power Move 8. Importance Dispensation.
It's an unfortunate reality of life that some people are either psychologically incapable of prioritizing you, or worse, seem to actively enjoy the sadistic power trip of keeping you deprioritized. These personality types can range from chronically narcissistic energy vampires to perpetual victims locked in toxic self-sabotage scripts. For the functional members of society possessing at least a shred of self-worth, preservation dictates avoiding close entanglement with these psychologically compromised individuals. Their sickness permeates across boundaries with ruthless efficiency, extinguishing light and inflicting collateral self-esteem damage on those foolish enough to stick around hoping for change.
Power Move 9. Cutting cancers cleanly.
Even after deploying every other psychological strategy in our arsenal, there eventually arrives an undeniable truth about certain people. They are permanently, irredeemably committed to disrespecting and deprioritizing our most earnest care. These are the runaway narcissists, textbook sociopaths, and remorseless energy vampires so depleted of empathy that the mere act of basic human consideration registers as weakness to be sadistically exploited. For our mental health and spiritual fulfillment, boundaries with these overgrown infants must not simply be reinforced, but become surgically excised with extreme permanence. To the limited extent we grant them accommodation in our cherished orbits is the limited extent we enable perpetual deprioritization. Zero exceptions. It's the hardest truth to swallow, especially when these toxic cancers arrive insidiously cloaked as friends, romantic prospects, or even family members. Conditioned by societal fairy tales of wounded bird remediation, we so desperately dream they'll earn their redeeming arc and blossom into appreciating our worth. At a certain point, you must unite mind, body, and soul in solemn certainty that these people are no longer participants in your civilization. They are anarchic homewreckers, tarnishing its sanctity with every breath until you banish their contagions. While occasional, well-intentioned people merely cycle through low prioritization phases, these emotional leeches come hardwired for perpetual extraction. The finality of ejection sends shockwaves through many. How can we discard the human familial bond so cavalier? To that, I ask, when the rare cancer becomes inoperable, do we not cut for survival? Cherish the relatives, or partners, or colleagues, or friends who evolved to mutually prioritize us through life's metamorphoses. But there comes a line where the incurable must be lovingly exorcised with no delay. Retain hope for strays and neglectors lost in their own emotional labyrinth, where all works in progress yearning for the lighthouse. But reserve to zero mercy or provocation for those who reveal themselves as permanently oversubscribed to depravity's all-consuming abyss. Your galaxy of goodness is too exquisite and irreplaceable to keep hosting black hole masses devouring its starlight. Learn to isolate and eliminate that interstellar toxic contamination with extremery. Only then can the intuitive priorities realign as the universe's guiding constants always envisioned cherished light having uncontested right to reign over infinite dark vacancies.